Hi, and welcome to today's sleep story. I'm Lara, and tonight we'll go on a gentle journey together. A story about a fairy named Amara. So find a comfortable position, whether sitting or lying down, and gently close your eyes. Take a deep breath in, allowing the air to fill your lungs, and exhale slowly, releasing any tension you may be holding. As you continue to breathe, let go of the worries of the day and bring your attention to the present moment. Once upon a time, in the magical land of Luminara, there lived a fairy named Amara. Amara was no ordinary fairy, though in appearance she seemed quite typical. She had shimmering wings that caught the moonlight, skin as soft as the petals of a rose, and a tiny, delicate frame that could easily be mistaken for a raindrop on a leaf. Like all fairies, she could flit through the air with the grace of a breeze, casting spells with the wave of her hand, and lighting up dark nights with a gentle glow. But there was one thing that set her apart. Amara longed to be human. Amara lived in an enchanting forest, hidden from the eyes of humans by ancient magic. Trees as tall as towers stretched to the sky, their leaves a soft emerald green, and streams of water that sparkled like diamonds flowed gently through the moss-covered ground. This forest was a place of wonder, where creatures of all kinds lived. Gnomes, sprites, talking animals, and of course, fairies. It was a paradise for many, but for Amara, something was always missing. For as long as she could remember, Amara had been fed up with her size. While other fairies seemed content with their small stature, flitting about between flowers, she dreamed of standing tall. Every time she looked up at the towering trees, or saw a human wandering near the edge of the forest, she felt a pang of envy. Humans could walk freely, explore vast lands, and experience the world in a way she never could. "I wish I were human," she would mutter, especially after a day of struggling to carry something, even as light as a pebble, or getting stuck in a spider's web. To her, being small was a burden. She didn't see how a little fairy could make any real difference in the world when everything around her was so much bigger. One night, as the moon shone high and full, Amara decided she had had enough. She was tired of feeling insignificant and powerless. She was tired of looking up at a world that seemed too grand for her small wings to conquer. And so, she set off on a journey. She flew deep into the forest, past the familiar meadows of glowing mushrooms, and over the sparkling river, where she and her fairy friends often played. She soared above the trees until the forest began to change, until it became wild and ancient, where even the bravest creatures rarely ventured. There, hidden among the twisted roots of an ancient oak tree, was a cave that Amara had heard stories about, but never dared to visit. It was said that in the cave lived an old fairy, one with magic so powerful that even the stars bowed to her will. Amara's heart raced as she fluttered down towards the cave entrance, the air thick with anticipation. She didn't know if the stories were true, but if there was anyone who could help her, it would be the old fairy. With a deep breath, she flew inside. The cave was cool and dim, the walls lined with crystals that pulsed with a soft glow. In the centre of the cave sat the old fairy, her wings tattered with age, but her eyes sharp as ever. She seemed to be expecting Amara, her gaze calm and knowing. "You seek something," the old fairy said before Amara could even speak. "You seek to change." Amara nodded eagerly. "I want to be human," she blurted out, her voice echoing off the cave walls. "I'm tired of being small. I want to be big, like them." The old fairy raised an eyebrow and tilted her head, studying Amara carefully. "And why would you want that, child? Do you not enjoy your wings, your magic, the freedom to fly wherever the wind takes you?" Amara shook her head, frustration bubbling up inside her. What good are wings when everything around you is so big? What good is magic when you're too small to make a difference? I want to walk on the ground like humans do, to be able to carry things, to reach up to the sky with my own hands. She paused, her voice quieter now. "I just want to feel like I belong." For a long moment, the old fairy said nothing. She simply stared at Amara, her eyes filled with wisdom that made Amara feel even smaller than usual. Then, with a wave of her hand, the old fairy gestured to a pool of water in the corner of the cave. "Look into the water," she said softly. "It will show you what you seek." Amara hesitated, but then fluttered over to the pool. The water was perfectly still, like a mirror reflecting the world. As she leaned over to peer into its depths, her reflection shimmered and changed. Instead of a tiny fairy, she saw herself as a human girl, tall, strong, and full of life. Her heart leaped at the sight. She could see herself running through fields, climbing trees, doing all the things she had wanted to do. "I can make this happen," the old fairy said, her voice gentle. "I can grant your wish. You can become human, but only if you are sure it is what you truly want." Amara's wings fluttered with excitement. Was she really ready to give up her fairy life? She thought of her tiny cottage tucked inside a flower, the friends she played with, and the freedom she felt soaring through the sky. But then she looked back at her reflection, standing tall and strong, and the desire to be human overwhelmed her once again. "I'm sure," she said, her voice steady. "I want to be human." The old fairy nodded. "Very well," she said, raising her hand and chanting a few ancient words. The air around Amara began to shimmer, and a strange warmth filled her tiny body. Her wings began to tingle, and her feet felt heavier, as if they were rooting to the ground. But just as the magic started to take hold, a sudden crash echoed from outside the cave. Startled, Amara's concentration broke, and she snapped her head towards the noise. The sound of voices, deep, booming voices, filled the air. Humans. Amara's heart raced. Humans rarely ventured this deep into the forest, but when they did, it usually meant trouble. Fairies knew to keep hidden, as humans had a way of trampling through the forest without a care, unaware of the delicate world they were disturbing. "I should go and see what they're doing," Amara said, her wings trembling. The old fairy said nothing, watching her with that same calm, knowing gaze. Amara hesitated. She had come here to become human, but something inside her told her she needed to see what was happening first. With a flutter of her wings, she darted out of the cave and into the night sky. The humans were in a clearing not far from the cave. There were 3 of them, all tall and towering over the plants that barely reached their knees. They were stomping through the forest, talking loudly, and carrying strange metal tools that glinted in the moonlight. Amara felt a pang of fear. She knew what those tools were for. They were here to chop down the trees. Panic surged through her tiny body. If the humans cut down the trees, they would destroy homes, fairy homes, animal homes, and the delicate balance of the forest. Without thinking, Amara swooped down toward the humans. But as she approached, she realized just how small she was compared to them. What could she possibly do? She was a speck of dust in their world, barely noticeable. "Stop," she shouted, but her voice was swallowed by the night. The humans kept moving, oblivious to her presence. Amara's heart sank. This was exactly why she wanted to be human, so she could be big enough to make a difference. But as she hovered there, watching the humans continue their destruction, something deep within her stirred. She remembered the old fairy's words. What good is magic when you're too small to make a difference? Suddenly, Amara understood. Her size wasn't a curse. It was a gift. As a fairy, she had magic, something the humans didn't have. And while she might be small, she could still use that magic to protect her world. With renewed determination, Amara flew higher, her wings sparkling in the moonlight. She stretched out her hand, summoning all the power she could muster. Her body glowed brighter and brighter, until the entire clearing was bathed in a soft golden light. The humans stopped in their tracks, shielding their eyes from the brilliance. Confused and disoriented, they looked around, their tools forgotten. Amara smiled to herself. She might be small, but in that moment, she was larger than life. With a flick of her hand, she called upon the forest. The trees rustled, their branches swaying as if alive. Vines crept up from the ground, wrapping around the humans' tools and pulling them away. The wind howled through the trees, urging the humans to leave. And leave they did. Startled and bewildered, the humans turned and ran, stumbling through the forest until their footsteps faded into the distance. Amara let out a sigh of relief as the forest grew still once more. She floated gently back to the ground, her wings tired, but her heart light. She had done it. She had saved the forest, not by becoming human, but by embracing the magic that came with being a fairy. As she flew back to the old fairy's cave, Amara felt different. Not physically, but inside. She had always thought that being small meant being powerless. But now she knew the truth. It wasn't about how big or small she was. It was about using what she had. Her magic, her courage, her heart to make a difference. When she arrived at the cave, the old fairy was still there, her eyes twinkling with pride. "I see you've made your decision," she said, her voice soft. Amara smiled, her wings fluttering gently. "I have," she said. "I don't want to be human anymore. I'm proud of being a fairy, no matter how small I am." The old fairy nodded. "You have learnt a valuable lesson, young one. Never underestimate the power of being small in a big world. You may be tiny, but your heart, your magic, they are boundless." Amara flew back to her home that night, the stars twinkling above her, and the forest alive with the sounds of the night. She no longer felt envious of the humans or burdened by her size. Instead, she felt free to be exactly who she was. A little fairy with big dreams and even bigger magic. And from that night on, Amara never doubted her place in the world again. She knew that no matter how small she seemed, she had the power to make a difference, not just in her world, but in the lives of those around her. All it took was a little magic, a lot of heart, and the belief that being small didn't mean being insignificant. And so, Amara continued to live her life in the forest, using her magic to help those in need and protect the world she loved. But now, every time she saw a human walking by, she smiled, knowing that she was exactly where she was meant to be.